Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity to drive your career forward. Tribe, I am extremely excited to introduce my guest today, Max Stossel. He is an award-winning poet and filmmaker and named by Forbes as one of the best storytellers of the year. And me personally, I had the privilege to experience his poetry firsthand this past summer at our sacred space in Vermont to kick off our annual spring outing in front of our giant prehistoric fire. I mean, it was epic. His energy, his flow, and his message hit me deep down inside, and my fire was lit. And for those of you unfamiliar with Max, his performances across 5 continents, from Lincoln Center here in New York to the Horton Pavilion in Sydney, have been described as mind-expanding, profound, emotive, and hilarious all at once. And his work has been translated into 14 languages, won tons of awards, been viewed 20 million times. You get the picture. And if you haven't seen his work yet, I highly recommend that you check it out. A little bit of background on Max. He's also the head of education at the Center for Humane Technology, an organization of former tech insiders and CEOs dedicated to realigning technology with humans' best interests. And we're going to get into that and talk about what that means. I mean, listen, I could go on and talk about him. There's a lot more on his website, but let's get right to it. Max, welcome to the podcast.
Whew, thank you for that introduction. Wow, I feel like we can stop right there. And
we can stop there. Yeah, absolutely. So before we get in, I definitely want to talk a lot about like your approach to really merging the fields of social media and human interaction. But before you made this pivot into full-time content creation, let's give my tribe a little bit of a backstory about your career, how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Sure. So when I was in college, I was getting my first job and they were like, hey, you're young, go figure out social media. And so I was working for a healthcare startup and they were having some trouble making sales and gathering leads. And then all of a sudden I was gathering a bunch of leads on Facebook and Twitter. And they were like, whoa, what are you doing? How are you doing that? And I was like, wow,
Sorcery.
I can be good. I can be good at this social media thing. I don't have to go to school for it. Like, that's great. I don't really like studying. I'm not so good at school. So great. I'll be a social media person. I ended up doing the social media advertising things first at an agency called Anomaly. I'm doing social strategy for Budweiser. And then like, it was so early, but like doing the smallest changes at the time were like, oh my God, this kid's a genius. He's not posting our press releases. He's posting pictures of beer. And now that works really, really well. It was very easy back then to be a star in the social media world. And in doing that, I got connected with Gary Vaynerchuk, who hired me on the spot and was like, let me mentor you, which was, I learned so much from that man. Actually, one of my business regrets is not taking more advantage of that mentorship, because I'm so afraid to ask him for anything because he's so big on his like jab, right hook thing. But anyway, was working social media, and then fell in love with startup world, did a social media startup for a little while. And that was, in doing that was where I started to recognize the power that we have as designers of these products, where, oh wow, design decisions actually really change the amount of time that we spend on them. And you didn't choose to spend more time on my thing. I made some changes, and now all of a sudden across the board, there's just more time being spent. Like, you didn't make that choice. I did. That's a lot of responsibility. Starting to recognize, oh, the entirety of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, these whole worlds are based around how do we grab and hold your time. And that was when I started meeting Tristan Harris and thinking about ethical technology. And that led into the Center for Humane Technology on that side of things. The poetry in like 2013, 2014, I heard a poet named InQ perform. I was like, that was dope. On the way home, I started writing about why I liked it. First 2 lines rhymed. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And now here we are, 6-ish years later. And I've got this one-man show. Doing that out in LA on November 6th. Have done many sold out performances here in New York and one in San Francisco, trying to figure out where that goes next from here. But that's been the deepest, most aligned to my purpose and who I am, fulfilling sides of my life, is performing poetry or spoken word or whatever it might be called, but carrying the essence of a message and helping that land in an audience.
That's awesome. And were you always a performer? Like when you were a kid, were you like doing like talent shows and kind of stand up? Were you like the ham of the family, or
I
is this
was a
something that came
jock.
later on in life?
I was a jock. I was soccer was my life, and yeah, this really it came much later and just sort of unlocked something in me. And so I always say, if you're inspired at all by my work, like start writing. Like that's how it happened for me, and it's been such a deeply fulfilling part of who I am and my career. And so if you're moved, give it a go because that's how it starts.
Yeah, and the piece that I love is that you're combining your knowledge and your experience with your passion, right? Like you have this innate ability to be a natural born storyteller. You're an incredible writer and you put it all together. So let's talk about, the concept of realigning technology with humans' best interest, because I think that's really the common theme throughout all of your work. Let's unpack that a little bit. And you have this inside knowledge because you've seen how these systems work, the gamification element, the addictive pieces and tools and elements in it to really keep us locked in. Let's unpack that a little bit and how you bring that to life.
How I bring to life the sharing of that information.
Exactly.
So this was definitely a merging of my two worlds, because when I met Tristan and was really inspired by what he was doing, I wrote this poem, which later turned into being called "This Panda is Dancing." And I was like, wow, okay, I really think this movement deserves more attention. And I've been good so far at turning my poetry, these messages, into short films and getting that attention, putting attention on issues that I think are important. And so I turned that video into a short film. One thing that I think I recognized because of my background was there's so much content, and some of this is Gary Vaynerchuk stuff, right? There's so much content on the internet. There is just this infinite pool of stuff. For a while, it was like more content created from the beginning of time to 2003, created every 48 hours. I'm sure it's now more like 24 or
Yeah, it's
5
insane.
hours. So much stuff. And so like, why should anybody give a crap about my stuff? And I think one of the reasons for my success with those videos that have gone viral is like that I really thought to myself, like, why should anyone care? With like the most skeptical and not about me attitude of just like, I have to cut through everything. Like, why? Like, it needs to be so good that people are like, wow, like this stands out from everything. And I think I've come to believe that with content creation, that there are two approaches, both of which I think are very valuable. One is put stuff out, like go, create.
Consistency. Yep.
It's not up to you, like what people find valuable. Some things will hit, it'll resonate for
Mm-hmm.
someone, and that's all that matters. And to be honest, I'm leaning more towards that way now. I think the truth is my art was so important to me that in the early days, I couldn't bear to like put things out in this other digital context that didn't seem to really be what it was. And I wanted to create the first things I made to be really aligned with like, yes, this is it. I'm taking the essence of the message and I'm getting it to work in this digital box that I'm trying to put together. And I'm going to make that land through the screen. I'm going to make that land. And I worked so hard and spent months and tried to find the best people to like make that happen. Now that I feel like, okay, there's a base online of like, you get like, I feel more comfortable.
You established.
Right. Let's see what works. In some ways I want to acknowledge like that was insecurity. Like if you're secure enough to be like, you know what, I'm just going to throw it out. And when something hits, great. I think that's a great strategy. But for me, I really wanted it to land through the screen. And so that was like, I really made a high production with the most skeptical attitude of like, how can I make this really stand out? And which of my pieces is really good enough? Because that's a hard one too, right? We create a lot. And then if we're thinking about what do we want to invest in creating it into like a video, especially something like that, that's going to be high quality. Let's like not get lost in our own like ego of like, oh, my stuff is great. It's like, well, you know what? Actually, I think that one might be good enough to invest all this time and effort into.
Yeah, and I feel you, and I'm on a content journey myself there. So let's take it a step back a little bit. I mean, you gain some real inside knowledge into how these systems work and how these platforms work. And, that's kind of like where you take all your content. And you have mentioned that your goal and mission is to help illustrate what a more beautiful world could look like where technology is on our team, right? And, being able to protect us from manipulation and helping us thrive. How could we get from where we are now, right? This addictive, this gamified system of, everyone walking down their street with their heads down and not taking in the inside world. I mean, people literally fucking walking into each other, walking into traffic, getting hit by buses, and taking it back to a world where our life is not ruled by social media. How do we get back? I know such a huge question here, but like, how can we start to get back to that? And like, how could the social media platforms take responsibility? I mean, I will pause here for a second. I think it's important that if you don't know, that Social media platforms make money by the more time you are spent on it. That's how they design these things. So it's counterintuitive to get us off of them. But if we are going to be on them, how could they help make us more efficient and more engaged with
Right.
society?
And one helpful metaphor in that is that if you're not the customer, you are the product in these digital environments, right? I don't pay for Instagram. I don't pay for
No.
Facebook. So that means I am the thing being sold because they sure are making a lot of money.
They're selling your attention to advertisers.
Right. And so from a platform standpoint, what are some things that they could do that would help be more on our team? And when you think about a social network, for me, of like, what would it look like for a piece of technology to be deeply caring and thinking about the nature and strength of our social lives? So what would it look like if they were really measuring and optimizing, how do I spend more physical time or like FaceTime with people that I deeply care about? Or what are new opportunities or experiences around me or digitally that I would later rate as meaningful? Like not just that I would do, we got to separate just like time spent being the ultimate metric here, but what are the sort of experiences that really I like that I later think are deeply meaningful or satisfying? Which like, and in some ways there's a weird perverse thing happening where if they really knew what deeply mattered to us, like our values, like I want to live more boldly, more creatively, more honestly, like what would it look like to actually help us in the things that we're most trying to do or be? That's like a very different system, right, than Facebook or Instagram as it exists now. And a lot of times
More
you think
passive.
it's all right, and it's not about the screen first and foremost. Like the screen is a tool, a vehicle towards our lives, and I think that's a big distinction that needs to start to break or change to put us more on the right direction of letting this stuff help us.
Are they making the platforms making any effort for this, or they just don't give a shit?
Baby steps, I think, and like the
Like
people
what?
working at these companies are good people, right? Like
Yeah,
no
it's
one's
not the
sitting
evil
behind the
empire. It's
screen,
not the
right?
Death
They're
Star.
not ha ha ha. Like that's not what's going on
Cupertino
here.
isn't the Death Star over there, right?
But there's big questions, and this is a lot of what the Center for Humane Technology is working on, is how do you change the incentive structures? Because right now, a lot of the bonuses are tied to, like, oh, great, you hit the metric, you increase time on
Or
site.
ad rev, right?
Right. And so I think it'll be a slow process. And in the meantime, we absolutely need to figure it out ourselves, right? Of how can we better resist the pull? How can we have healthier relationships with these devices? And it can't fall all on the
Right. I mean,
companies.
we have to take
ownership
personal
too.
responsibility. I mean, I think like, the iPhone and the other devices, showing screen time. I get my reports every day. And I'll be honest with you, dude, I am completely addicted to my phone. I admit it. It's a deep, terrible addiction from the professional side. I'm a recruiter. I'm always checking updates. Did someone accepted? They respond. Like, I mean, that's the response mechanism that they've built there, right? Those notifications. But I also sadly see it in my kids. And it's something I want to talk about a little bit too. You talk a lot about educating in the age of distraction. I have two small kids. I have a 7.5-year-old daughter and a 1.5-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, and listen, there's a time and a place when I give them that iPad that is for me.
Yeah.
So I can make dinner. I could take care of my younger kid, right? And that's where it helps too. But I see them, they have the zombie mode on, like they're fully in. And my daughter, she's getting more into the games now. And I protect her, and we could talk about, that whole world in a little bit, but they're zombies. They're attracted to it. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, because you go to schools and you're talking to parents and PTAs and everything, and you're giving them the tools on how to address the education in like the social emotional world in the digital age. So let's talk about some tips that you give when educating parents and educators.
Sure. So the first and hardest one, and you admitted it yourself, is of like leading by example, right?
I'm the worst, dude.
And it's funny because we're living in New York, right? And if you go on the subway, and I often from the parents like, these kids, they're all addicted to the phones, the kids. And if you look around on the subway, the kids are often too young to have phones. And every adult in their whole car is just head down, zombie out on the phones. You only see the kids.
Our necks are going to get stuck like this.
Looking around. And the kids are the only ones looking around and with their heads not completely in a device. And then, of course, when your parents are doing that, when the adults around you are doing that, you're going to be so excited to get this thing that everybody's attention is on all the time.
Yeah, you want what you can't have.
Right. And leading by example also in like when if you're talking to your 7-year-old and your phone buzzes on the table, it's like having the self-control to not let that buzz be more important than the real world interaction. And that's hard. Like, I don't want to say that's easy.
You're spot on in that. And one thing that we do in our family, there's certain times when the phone is physically away. So meals off, golden rule in our house, like hard rule. Phone has to be in another room on the table.
Zones. Yeah. Zones are great. bedroom sometimes, or dinner tables can be
Screen
really,
monitoring, right? How many hours you're on it, monitoring the sites that they're on.
right. But so that leading by example, and then another helpful tool another helpful tool in that is saying, like, if you are reaching for the phone, like if you are like, hey, I need to call this person because I'm doing this, and then afterwards I'm going to put it down. Kind of really help illustrating how it's a tool for you, and saying this is what I'm using it for. After that, I'm putting it down, so that you can model that behavior for them as well.
It's tough.
It's really tough, and there's so many different elements of this. Other things people have found helpful, turning off all notifications that are not from a human being trying to reach you. So no happy holidays from Tinder, you haven't played Candy Crush in a while, this person has liked your photo. Those might be algorithmically generated and just really trying to grab you and pull you in. That one can be helpful too.
That's such a good tip too. And I did it on my phone too, where I only have the settings for really important things. And that's helped a lot because that buzzes, you're picking it up. That brights up, you're picking that up as well. And for me, I'm really trying to set a good example for my kids. But again, at the same time, Gary talks about that too with technology. He's talked about it. He's like, I'd rather my kid understand how to use this technology than not at all. Otherwise, they're going to fall behind the curve. But there's a balance there.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with Gary on this one, and it would be a
Sure.
terrifying thing to debate Gary in any sort of
We can
setting.
make that happen.
That is the most compelling human being that I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know, and he's a very persuasive person. But for me, it doesn't seem like, especially in the schools I'm going to and the parents I'm talking to, it doesn't seem like we're at risk of not understanding or knowing how to use these platforms or not being familiar with them. It's like the exposure is there and happening, period. What it feels like we are at risk of is not understanding what existence is like without them, of what socializing is like without them. And so for me, with my kids, when I have them, and I don't have kids, I want to be
not that you know of.
Not that I know of. Pretty confident that I don't have kids. And I want to create as much of a baseline as I can of life without phone and life without social media, so that when it's introduced, and I imagine there will be then a burnout period, there will be all sorts of overload. It seems like we go through that. All of us, we do. And I hope by the time that I have kids, there'll be technology that'll be better designed, so it won't be such a hard challenge. But I would much rather have a baseline of this is what life is like, so that could be returned to, and we can remember what those meaningful social interactions feel like, so that we don't get tricked into believing that just this is what life is. There's preliminary research I just heard about, which is scary for me. And again, some of this is scare stuff and takes a time for research to really confirm, but where it would, they were saying if you're exposed at a young age to the digital rewards, your brain literally starts to respond better to those digital rewards than physical rewards. So in a developing mind, right, you literally start to they become more important in your life later on, and so it would be even harder to go off. But it's your kids are the guinea pigs.
Yeah,
it's totally unfair, but your kids
balance.
are the guinea pigs.
It's a tough balance, and we really try to be mindful too, because there's the entertainment value on there. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in the 70s and 80s when I grew up, of a parent plopping you in front of the TV. Right? It's still having that distraction there. So there's a delicate balance there, but I think it really comes down to the parent taking responsibility, limiting screen time, monitoring what your kids are watching, really understanding what they're doing. And there's a lot of great stuff out there. I mean, my kids do reading and educational games, which is super beneficial. That has a lot of those gamification elements. So there's pros and cons to everything there, and it's about responsible parenting and really monitoring everything.
For sure. And I truly, I don't mean to teach their own. Do you, for sure. One thing, I do feel like it's different. It seems like a different category shift from TV. It was similar to putting the kid in front of a TV, but there weren't 1,000 engineers on the other side of the TV updating the TV every day to make it more personally engaging for you. You weren't carrying the TV around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They're much bigger back then.
Yeah, and you didn't have to go inside the TV to talk to your friends or to do your work. No. So it's there seems to be a different category of thing happening here.
Right. And it comes down to attention, which is the next piece I want to talk about, the current state of attraction economy. So let's unpack that and explain that a little bit to my tribe. What is attraction economy, and how is that impacting humanity?
Extraction economy?
Or attraction
economy?
Yeah.
I'd never heard the term attraction economy.
Attention economy.
The attention economy is that your time is our money. that your time is where the value is being derived from some of the biggest companies in the world. That's based on an advertising model. And so if I can get your attention, I can get ad revenue. And so that's what so much of our economy is now based on, especially when it comes to media and screens. And so one thing that I feel like is worth talking about here is that system makes it very hard to look at you as let's call it 30. I'm assuming you're 30 years old. A 30-year-old man.
40. Yeah, I appreciate that.
For a 40-year-old man, and I got this much of your attention this year, and I need more of it next year to keep my shareholders happy. And so if somebody else has created a new trick that's really good at grabbing your attention, I kind of feel like I need to do that trick too, because you only have 24 hours in your day, and I need more of it. Tristan likes to talk about how it takes 9 months to grow new attention. So it becomes this race to the bottom of just what works at grabbing and holding attention. And in that system, like, Donald Trump is a great example of something he's wonderful at grabbing attention. Like, he is fantastic at it. He is better than anyone I've seen.
It's saying that he's actually really good at something.
I know. Everything he says or does, immediately everybody is talking about. And so in our media ecosystem, that's the type of thing that rises to the top, the most extreme, the most outrageous, the most talk aboutable. But often that's not necessarily aligned with the people or things we might want to be focusing our attention on, right? When you drive by on the highway, a car on fire, everybody sort of slows down, right? But do we want all of our attention on screens to be shifted towards the different fires or scary things? Actually, I'll send you, there's a video of like a chimp scrolling through Instagram. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, not yet.
And it's really jarring for me, because you watch the chimp, you watch it go through all of the base things that I feel like we're doing, which is he sees other chimps in one photo, and so he stops and he looks at that. And then he goes back and he sees a snake, a sort of a scary thing. He looks at that, he looks at the snake. And then he sees like a woman in a bikini, and he clicks on that. But like the reflection of self, sex, and fear, it feels like those are the things.
The primal instincts. Literally.
Yeah, the primal instincts are grabbing our attention.
Oh, man.
And a whole deep ecosystem that pushes us that way. What kind of world does that create?
Yeah, and we have to protect it ourselves there. So I assume you've seen the movie The Great Hack. I assume, safe assumption there. How, based on your experience and your professional expertise here, how much of that movie is true? I mean, is this all this data coming back and really just destroying us and kicking us in the ass? Like, they know everything.
I'm less worried about the data than most people. I feel like in this field. I also, to me, in some ways, that movie felt to me like they were describing what advertising is, but just putting really ominous music in the background.
I was scared. I was watching it on a flight, and I was kind of like curled up against the window, and like I was happy that my phone was in airplane mode at the time.
It was I don't like, and it might be my own ignorance, but it just, and I guess at mass scales with things like elections, when you can use data in that precise amount of targeting, that is reason to concern or to take different steps as a platform. But I just don't believe that for most people we're actually that persuadable, even if you have a lot of data on us. And some of the like very specific targeting is interesting and worth looking at. But I'm maybe just ignorant on this topic. I'd be surprised if like we're really if it really works that well.
I think where it's a little misleading, because I think that there's a lot of people that just are easily persuaded and compelled by social media and seeing it in their storyline. I mean, I think us as New Yorkers and a lot of other intelligent people across the country, it's a relatively small percentage, but you think about what happened in the last election. I'm not even gonna get too political about it, but when something is forefront, top of mind, it's in every one of your fields, it's going to have an effect on a certain amount of people that are easily persuaded. And we kind of saw it happen there. And it's scary.
But it is scary. What I just don't like about that is like, if it doesn't work, I don't like thinking, well, if it doesn't work it works on them, but not on me. And it's like, the them is made up of me's, and so I do like to think of like, is this really the root cause here? Is this really what's happening? Are we being persuaded through social media, or is there other stuff in play? Because right. I don't
fears, other deeply rooted.
Yeah, just other stuff going on. Because I think if it doesn't work if I don't feel like it's persuading me, I'd be surprised if it's persuading others, or so many others, so much more than it's persuading me.
Yeah.
But who
So
knows?
on that same note, like with, so much of us, our personal information, our data there, I'd love to get your take on how we can protect ourselves, while we're on social, right? And I'm not talking about your credit card information, everything, but how do we protect our identity? How do we protect ourselves and really be true, but at the same time, keeping stuff private?
So in the same way that I probably, to privacy experts, just had a very ignorant answer to that last question. I don't know what the best steps and practices are in the
Yeah, stay
privacy
off social
stance.
media.
My attitude, yeah, and also my thoughts are like, stuff is out there now. It's pretty hard to, and if somebody's really trying to go after your stuff, they're probably going to. One thing that I found interesting that stayed in my mind was like not using your real birthday on a lot of sign up things, because that can be a piece of information that people use
It's a
for
data validation point for security checks and everything.
right. It's like it's often things are asking for your birth date that don't really need it, and not giving your real birthday to things
That's a
that
good
don't
one.
really need it is something that I take on personally, but I am not a privacy expert and don't want to pretend to be.
Cool. Let's shift gears a little bit to your creative work. I mean, dude, it's fucking, your work is beautiful.
Thank you,
Like,
man.
I've been sharing it ever since I came back from Vermont. I've been like literally like sending it to everybody. It's like a quick copy paste to everybody. Everyone's like, holy shit, who is this dude? Let's talk about this creative process a little bit, right? First, I want to understand, like, when you have a concept in your head for a piece of work, poetry, are you also thinking about the video in the end, or are you focusing first on the content?
It's a great question. In the most of the time, it's the writing is first, and it's more like, oh my god, I'm getting hit with the thing. The thing is happening. I got to get the thing down. Got to catch it. Got to catch the thing.
Did Subway Love
Um,
happen on the subway? Just quick
yeah,
interjection. You're on the
absolutely.
subway. You had this concept, like West Side Story kind of meeting.
West 4th Street, and I was like
Yeah.
thinking about just like how hard it is to connect in New York City, and look at all these people and staring into the tunnel, and then got hit with it. I was like, we look like these urban soldiers. Wait, ooh, that's poetic. Urban soldiers waiting for the train, and then that really came out in like 45 minutes. That whole thing.
Wow.
And yeah, I really believe Elizabeth Gilbert's book Big Magic, I think, is a pretty awesome way of looking at like how creativity works. And I think it's like the ideas come and we try to grab them and put them down. The Stop Making Murderers famous video was one that I was thinking about
Great
the
piece.
video for while I was writing, because social media was so baked into that idea. And that's a piece about like how the copycat effect with mass shootings, and how we glorify and create this infamy that is sometimes desirable for shooters. And I was thinking about the video during the writing process of that one, but most of the time it's concept first, write, get it down. Oh, I hope it can be something that can be performed. We'll see how that looks or feels. And then the video process for me was, if this is one that's really well received and people are saying, oh my God, can you send me that poem? Can you send that to me? Then start to maybe invest into the video.
I love it.
Side of things.
So you like a comedian, like how like Jerry Seinfeld will like literally show up at Comic Strip Live to like test out material. Like, do you kind of test things during your live show and then like, test pieces, test concepts, and then blow it out into a full blown, piece of work?
I don't do enough of that, is the truth. I should do more testing and going.
Yeah,
Honestly, I want to try to do stand up.
Really? Is that what is it? Yeah.
Just because my show is an hour of poetry and it's got comedy in it. But for an hour of poetry to work, it's got to be funny. It can be it can be very intense for an audience if there's not comedy in there. But yeah, I would love to do more testing. Is the truth. I think the reality is, like, once I'm on stage, I still want to give people like my best stuff that I'll go in thinking, okay, I'm going to test this. And then once I'm up there, I'm like, no, I want to give the full experience. But it would be beneficial for me to.
I love it. And so let's talk about the video process too. So now you have this piece of written work. Like, are you working with different directors and animators and effects guys for each one, or do you have a team that you've established that understands kind of your vision and your flow? What does that look like?
So the first one, there's someone named Matthew Friedel, and I was like, there's so much content on the internet. A lot of the visual stuff that's being done to me felt disconnected from story. It felt like really cool visually, but not tied to the story or idea of the message. And I really care deeply about story. And so I found Matthew Friedel was someone who created. You ever see the This Is Water? David Foster Wallace.
No,
it's
I'll
like a
have to check it
grocery
out.
store. It's beautiful. I highly recommend.
This Is Water. Yeah.
This Is Water. And he had created that video, and he had so beautifully taken David Foster Wallace's words and turned them into video. And I was like, yes, like he just enhanced the words and made it visual. That's exactly what I want. And so I cold called him, performed the poem for him over the phone, and was like, "Hey, will you do this with me?" And he was like, "You don't have a budget?" I was like, "No," but he was like, "Just fly me out, we'll do it." And I was like, "Yes." And honestly, I so lucked out because
Nice.
I was being very naive in thinking, "Oh, just a videographer. I need a videographer." He turned out to be a director, a cinematographer, a effects person. He just was the whole package, which is really rare. And then after that, I met someone named Sander Van Dyke, who was one of the most brilliant animators, motion graphics people in the world, and I worked with him on the other two.
And I'll pause here because people that are listening here, I mean, you have to go to his website. I'm going to link everybody in a minute. You have to check this shit out. I showed it to my wife the other night for the first time, and she ended up watching Subway Love, I think 3 times in a row. Like, she was like, "Who are these people?"
It means a lot to me.
No, yeah. I mean, dude, it was incredible, man. I mean, just for a quick tidbit, I mean, you're a digital marketing guy at heart, man. How do you apply your knowledge on audience growth to your medium here and to your art? How do you grow your audience?
So badly. I do it so badly.
Shame.
It's fun. I feel the tension big time. Even in my videos, like I didn't do the first 3 seconds tactics of like gotta grab people in, things that work. It's like within my art, I couldn't bear to do it.
You have to be true to your work, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to like meld a tactic in there that's not true to what you're doing.
Yeah. And so, like, because I have my aversions to social media and it feeling so fake and phony in many ways, to me, I have a lot of trouble. Like on my goals list right now is like create a social media strategy that's consistent and doesn't make you hate yourself.
Oh God, that's like an oxymoron.
And that's the challenge for me. And I want to get better at just like, and one thing that's been helpful for me more recently is like, hey, if you're putting something out that helps one person, that is worthwhile. It's like, can I create content consistently that is really like deeply aligned to try to help one person?
It's so interesting because I believe a lot of people say that, but they don't mean it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say that, and I think it's kind of bullshit too, because I think ultimately our inner goal is as many eyeballs, monetization, scaling as possible, because I think it's kind of human nature. But I agree with you too, because like in oh God, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Because I say when I put out this podcast, my goal is if one freaking person watches this and they take an action on it, and they're inspired, or they help them get a job or something, then mission accomplished. And I believe in that. Yeah, but you know what? Like if 10 more people watch it, I get 10 more people jobs, or I get 10 more clients, that doesn't hurt either, right?
It's exciting. But I love that you were like, I feel like people say that and don't do it, because I think that's true. And I think it's so hard to really be like, okay, what's the motivation here? What's the incentive? Am I sharing this because like I'm trying to help somebody, or am I sharing this because I want the likes, I want the feel good? And I want to get better about thinking, what is something that someone needs to hear today? Like, how can I really separate myself from like, I don't care. If 4 people like this, I don't care. Like if 0 people like this, I don't care. I'm going to try.
Stop being a metrics whore, right? Stop being an attention mongrel and looking for those likes. And I mean, that's part of the system.
It's so hard. It's genuinely hard for us to do, right?
I'm guilty of it.
Not getting the likes feels bad, right?
It does.
It just feels like, that means
no one likes me.
So we put that on it. But how great would it be to not feel that way? How great would it be to be able to create content, to share the things that we feel like matter, to be measuring our own success as like, fuck yeah, like I just helped that person, or like I just gave this piece of value, maybe made this person laugh, like whatever it might be, but just take it away from this got the numbers towards like I created, and like value has been overused. I created an experience or something meaningful for a person, and like that felt really good, or for lots of people, and that felt really good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Very different ecosystem than what would exist today.
Well, isn't Instagram testing removing the likes?
They are in Canada, I believe.
In a small section, right? Because imagine the Kardashians. Imagine like the Kardashians or any of these influencers that remove the likes. Like, how are you going to monetize it? How are they going to know how many people are?
I think they're still showing them on the back end. So you can still show, and which is so interesting, because then still a lot of these
they got to do both.
Driven in the same way. It's hard, right? And it's funny how those little changes change so much or so little all at once. But I think that's a step in the right direction.
It is, and it's a testable proposition.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're giving that a go.
So all this kind of brings up a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's authenticity. But what does that word mean to you, Max?
I hate it in the social context, because it's so overused. And what does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean?
Vulnerable, authentic.
Vulnerability's become a competition on social media.
Who could be more vulnerable, and it's creating so much fake authenticity. It's bullshit.
It does. I feel like it's very hard to be authentic by the definition people are giving, on social media, right? By nature, social media, we're capturing a little box or a little piece of a moment or of our lives. And we're saying, look, here's what's going on. And it imitates life in a way that is close enough that it's actually kind of looks like that might be what's going on. Even this piece of content we're creating right now, I'm sharing one very limited sliver of who I am, of what we're talking about, of this topic. We're not talking about the insecurities that are going on in my life, in your life right now. We're not talking about
That's a separate show, man.
It's a separate show, and if it were, it wouldn't be the whole picture, right? But it's presenting, as we brand ourselves and create these profiles and these images, we're presenting this close to reality picture that eliminates very important human pieces, that just makes it very hard to, like, I don't believe there's such a thing as authentic social media. There are a couple of people who I think do it really well, all things considered. Gary does it really well, all things
He's the real deal.
Amber Ray is someone who I think does it really well, all things considered. I love Humans of New York. I think that's beautiful.
My wife's favorite site.
It's really, I think that's a beautiful capturing of like a moment and humanizing person by person. But in general, like I couldn't give you very many more examples of people that I see where I'm like, they're doing it. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I love it, man. So a couple of questions I ask every guest here. You know, the first one is, what is the single best piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on daily, that you're mindful of, that you make sure that you keep that in the back of your mind, that you're true to?
Single best piece of advice I've ever received that I take action on daily. It's a tough one. Single best piece of advice.
Think about it. It's all good.
On daily. Well, actually, one. This is what comes to mind right now. Is I have a practice called Beauty in the Day, from my roommate Adam, who created this, which is throughout the day I'm sort of on the lookout in the back of my mind for something that is beautiful, and then I write that down in a journal, and then I date it, and then a year later, I reach out to the person who it was about, and I say, hey, a year ago today, you told me this, or you said this, or you did this, and I just thought that was really beautiful.
I like that.
And it's really
a little bit of gratitude practice in there too.
It's like a gratitude practice. It's a beauty practice, and it creates these incredible moments where, like, you don't remember what you said or did like a year ago, and to be able to have that moment in benchmark has been a really.
I like that. I think I might try to practice that one too. I don't know how much you think about legacy and how much that means to you, but if I was going to ask you, if I am going to ask you right now, what, like, at this point of your life right now, if today was your last day on earth, what legacy would you want to leave behind? How would you want to be remembered?
Yeah. I want to be remembered as somebody who helped people see the beauty in humanity and in their own lives, who helped see the world around them see the world around them differently. And yeah, just like to see the incredible, spectacular opportunity and gift that we have to be alive, and that helped us love ourselves and each other.
I love it. And what is your superpower? What do you do better than almost anyone on this planet?
I see to the essence. I see through the bullshit to the essence of what is there. And I think I can share and help deliver that essence as a package from here to you in a way that lands. And I think at my best, a poem is, for one moment, we're looking at this thing, like the thing that we try to communicate with. Words are so far removed from reality. Words are like, I have a thought and I have an experience that turns into thoughts and emotions, that turns into words. That is very far removed from the thing itself. It's like putting something into Google Translate and then putting it 3 times in languages back and forth and then sharing it. But it's one of the best ways we have of communicating. But I think my poetry at its best grabs the essence and, like, actually just for a moment, like, we're looking at the same thing, the same true moment together. And I think that is my superpower, is being able to cut through the disconnection, the illusion of separateness, towards looking at it together for a moment.
That is beautiful, man. And last but not least, right? Like, not every day is sunshine, rainbows, and on time New York City transit system. Not every day is like that. Some days suck. Some days it's a 95 degrees stuck in the subway, sweating your balls off, right? And then other days are just beautiful. You're seeing so much beauty in life and gratitude and everything. When things are not so great and when things are amazing, what do you look to? Max Stossel, what is your North Star?
Yeah, gratitude is definitely a big practice when things aren't good, because no matter how bad things are, like I'm here and I'm conscious and I'm alive, and returning to the beauty of that. When I feel like more recently, when I've been going through like intense negative feelings, I've been feeling of like trying to have the perspective of gratitude of like, wow, like I get to feel this much of like and I'm living in a way that this is the flip side of like I've jumped high enough that I will fall this hard. And so like I'm grateful that that's how I'm living. I do want a big life, and a big life involves big negative emotions. That's where I am right now. And okay, I'm going to be in that, and then not isolating, going outside, talking to friends.
Yes.
When I isolate, I'm in bad place with that stuff. And I live with a roommate that I love living with a roommate. I do not like living alone.
Yeah.
For that very reason, to have friends, lean on community.
That's
in those
incredible.
situations.
And Max, what's next for you? Where are you taking this Deaf Poetry Slam Jam to? What's next?
LA. I got the show in LA November 6th. I would love to see anybody listening there. There's still some tickets left for that one. And then I'm figuring out where to bring the show next. I love the show. I'm
bring
so
it back
proud
to New
of
York.
The show. I don't know exactly, like I need to figure out how to, like, once people are at the show, they love it and it's amazing. I need to figure out how to, what, a poetry show? Huh? What is that?
We need more fire dancers. We need
fire dancers are good marketing. But yeah, I would love to, perform at conferences, events, looking to do more shows. And so would love to, anybody listening who wants to see my work and wants to book me, reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that offline, because I got some ideas in my network as well. I want to help you get your word out there. My superpower is connecting. I'm a connection conduit, right? Like I connect the dots of two disparate pieces. You may not know this person or this person, and I'm that middleman who brings it together. So I'm going to do that. Max, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So my closing thoughts here, I was going to approach it kind of like, I was going to like write my own rap, my own like Wu-Tang song, and I just failed at it. So I'm just going to go at it right here. So closing thoughts. Max's purpose is to illustrate what a more beautiful world would look like if we use the power of technology for good. His use of words, imagery, AR, and incredibly beautiful video production bring his thoughts to life and resonate deep inside of us. More importantly, his work evokes emotion and action to think more critically about how our social media engagement and interaction affects us individually and those close to us and society as a whole. It causes us to reflect, react, and hopefully recalibrate. Keyword, recalibrate. Think about what you're doing there. And for better or worse, social media is ingrained in our everyday lives and society. Being mindful and present, and every once in a while, pick your head up and take a look at the beauty of the world in front of you and not in front of your screen. And if you've not checked out Max online, please do so now. Subway Love is one, is time well spent, and it's required viewing. And I think everybody needs to check it out. And I'm definitely going to link that when I share this show. Max, thank you for coming on. I look forward to continuing to build our relationship and finding synergies. Where could people find you?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and me too. You can find me at wordsthatmove.com, www.wordsthatmove.com. I'm on all the social things as at Max Stossel, MaxStossel. And yeah, I would love to see you at a show. Most of all, is what really, those are the closest to my heart.
We're going to post dates and all that. Hopefully get Max back in New York pretty soon here. Max, thank you. I appreciate you and your time coming on.
Thank you. Great talking.
And to everyone listening, thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Please remember all the social media channels that we just talked tons of shit about. Links below. No, there are good. There's a lot of good in all of that. Thank you for subscribing, commenting, linking, sharing with your friends. Remember, take your online offline. I implore you to do that. Go outside, see the world, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.